central bank rate hikes, calling them a necessary development after markets plunged in response to U.S. President Donald Trump blasting the Fed for going crazy with plans to raise borrowing costs again.
And Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad's push for a third national car brand is aimed to consolidate trade within ASEAN to weather potential fallout from ongoing economic tension between the U.S. and China, according to Darrell Laking.
An earthquake on Thursday killed 3 people in Indonesia and rattled hotels where IMF delegates are attending a major summit, a fortnight after a quake tsunami killed more than 2,000 elsewhere in the archipelago. The 6.0 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Indonesia's Bali and Java Islands in the early hours, jolting residents awake and sending them rushing into the streets. Some attendees in Bali for the International Monetary Fund and World Bank annual meetings this week evacuated their hotels as the quake shook the island. Katerina Sudiono, an Indonesian attendee at the summit, told media that she felt the quake for at least 30 seconds and that she panicked. At first, she didn't want to go out, but then she decided to leave. Peter Jacobs, head of the Indonesian Central Bank's IMF World Bank Task Force, said delegates in Bali's Nusa Dua district for the summit were quickly informed of the situation. There were no immediate reports of damage or injuries in Bali, and the summit proceeded Thursday uninterrupted. The conference center was designed to withstand seismic events, and participants had been told to remain there in the event of a quake. In case of tsunami risk, attendees would be evacuated to a nearby building.
President Rodrigo Duterte arrived in Bali, Indonesia to attend the ASEAN leaders gathering upon the invitation of Indonesian President Joko Widodo. The president is set to deliver a speech at the said event to underscore the importance of strong regional and global cooperation and maintaining security and stability in order to achieve sustainable development goals. Among the officials who joined the president are Secretaries Alan Peter Cayetano of Foreign Affairs, Carlos Dominguez of Finance, Benjamin Jokno of Budget and Management, Ernesto Pernia for Socio-Economic Planning, Martin Andanar of Communications, and Special Assistant to the President Bongo. Duterte will address the meeting and highlight the need to sustain inclusive and sustainable growth and development for all through stronger regional and global cooperation and greater security and stability. At the sidelines of the ASEAN leaders gathering, Duterte will meet with ASEAN leaders to discuss bilateral issues of mutual importance. The inaugural ASEAN leaders gathering is a special meeting of ASEAN leaders with International Monetary Fund or IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde, World Bank President Jim Yong Kim, and United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. It will also showcase the ASEAN leadership and solid cooperation in managing the region's economic growth, as well as their SDGs achievements. It will be co-chaired by Widodo and Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong of Singapore as chair of ASEAN 2018.
Myanmar police on Wednesday arrested 3 journalists after their paper criticized the financial management of Yangon's government, which is overseen by a protege of leader Aung San Suu Kyi in the latest case to spark concern over press freedom. Rights groups criticize the detention of the 3 from 11 Media, which comes as the latest in a long series of cases brought against the media under vague and outdated laws. Executive editors Kiao Zhao Lin and Na Yi Min and chief reporter Pyo Wai Win were hauled in before a Yangon court in handcuffs on Wednesday morning to hear the charges against them before being carted off to jail. Defense lawyer Ki Mian told AFP the case was filed over an article published on Monday about the funding behind the city's bus network, a scheme run by Yangon Chief Minister and Suu Kyi confidant Phyo Min Thieng. All 3 of them were sent to insane prison this morning after a case was filed against them under Section 505B, defense lawyer Ki Min told media. The trio could be fined and jailed for up to 2 years if a court rules that their story was published with intent to cause or was likely to cause fear or alarm to the public. According to Ravi R. Prasad from the Vienna-based International Press Institute, their arrest is an affront to press freedom and a sign the government is close to becoming an authoritarian regime. Hilaing Thit Zinwai, founder of the Protection Committee for Myanmar journalists, said the whole media industry is under threat. The arrest came just a few weeks after the sentencing of two Reuters journalists to 7 years in jail at the end of what was widely seen as a sham trial, during which a police officer testified that they had been set up.
It reads like a modern-day take on The Old Man and the Sea. 5 Filipino fishermen cast adrift for days on a makeshift raft after a huge marlin sinks their boat. The men were fishing in the South China Sea last week when a 6-foot or 1.8-meter marlin punctured their boat's wooden hull. With his giant bill, vessel master Jimmy Batilier told AFP on Wednesday. Their 12-meter boat quickly dipped beneath the waves in the early evening of October 3, leaving the crew with little drinking water or food until their eventual rescue by the U.S. Navy on Monday. Batilier said the fish hit the bottom of their boat, leaving 2 big holes. They suspect it was chasing a smaller fish because it swam around the sinking boat for a while. Apparently, it disoriented. The fishermen salvaged what they could, removing the outriggers, planks and barrels to create a makeshift raft. According to the 42-year-old father of one, their water ran out after 2 days, and they even waved at passing commercial vessels, but no one came to rescue them. But they did not lose hope, adding that the crew was also ate raw rice and drank some seawater. When they were rescued, that was when their tears fell, said Batilier, who has since been reunited with his family in Subic, a port about 80 kilometers or 50 miles northwest of Manila.
Narito po ang mga dapat ninyong abangan.
Kami magkakaibigan pa rin.
Sa akin, pagka ganun, dismayado na ako. So sa akin, moment yon. Paano namin iangat? No?
What makes it different is that it's 95% production numbers lahat.
Dumating na kami sa punto na nagpapasalamat rin kami. Kaya namin rin ginagawa to eh.
Ang pinaka-importante sa lahat, happy. Happy
Yes. Ang lahat ng yan dito sa programang punong-puno ng pagmamahal, Moments.
Pep News, Linggo, alas 4 hanggang alas 5 ng hapon.
Welcome back. IMF Chief Christine Lagarde defended central bank rate hikes, calling them a necessary development after markets plunged in response to U.S. President Donald Trump blasting the Fed for going, quote, crazy with plans to raise borrowing costs again.
It's clearly a necessary development for those economies that are now showing much improved growth. Inflation that is picking up and falling into the range or reaching the thresholds, unemployment that are extremely low. It's inevitable that central banks make the decisions that they make.
Absolute highest priority.
U.S. President Trump's comments Wednesday triggered a sell-off on Wall Street, with Asian markets opening sharply lower on Thursday in response. He says he thinks the Fed is making a mistake. It's so tight, he thinks the Fed has gone crazy. But Lagarde added that uncoordinated developed country rate hikes were contributing to destabilizing capital outflows from emerging markets.
In a report recently published by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or UNIPCC, it predicted a bleak future for the entire world, with increasing food shortages and large masses of coral reefs dying off within the next 22 years. Some of the findings revealed that there will be increased droughts and poverty brought on by the atmosphere's temperature climbing up to 1.5 degrees Celsius if greenhouse gas emissions continue at the current rate. If 1.5 degrees of warming does occur, Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam, including countries like Japan, China, Egypt, and the U.S., will experience increased flooding by 2040. It is predicted that people from tropical countries, including Malaysia, could have to rapidly evacuate from their countries, while in some nations, national borders will become irrelevant. Some environmental damage, like dead coral reefs, could be reversible if the world heats up by more than 2 degrees Celsius.
Our land is degraded. Our seas drown in our waste. We lose our luminous biodiversity. Climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our time. We must produce and consume sustainably. Fight desertification and flooding. Be more resilient, more adaptive. Support sustainable cities and human settlements. We must conserve all that we love. Protect our oceans. We can guard that which gives us life.
A new Singapore Airlines route connecting the city-state to New York goes into operation Thursday, becoming the longest commercial plane ride in the world. The journey covers a distance of 16,700 kilometers or 10,400 miles in just under 19 hours, making it the lengthiest in both distance and time. There is no economy class. The cabin is configured in only 2 segments, 67 business class seats and 94 premium economy seats. The route uses the fuel-efficient ultra-long-range variant of Airbus's A350-900, a category of plane that airlines are increasingly turning to as they look to squeeze more miles out of every drop of pricey fuel. At the time, the 14,100-kilometer link was the longest non-stop flight by distance from the U.S. to anywhere in the world, the airline said. Here are the world's next longest flights. Auckland to Doha, 17-hour, 40 minutes. Qatar Airways Flight 921 using a Boeing 777 held the previous title as world's longest commercial route, flying passengers over 14,500 kilometers from the New Zealand capital to Doha. Houston to Sydney, 17 hours, 30 minutes. United 787 Dreamliners fly 13,800 kilometers to connect Australia's biggest city with Houston in the southern U.S. Auckland to Dubai, 17-hour, 20 minutes. Auckland has a second link to a Middle Eastern hub through Emirates Flight 449, which flies Airbus's A380 Super Jumbo to Dubai at a distance of 14,200 kilometers. Los Angeles to Singapore, 17 hours, 20 minutes. United launched its service connecting Los Angeles LAX Airport to Singapore using 787 last year. Perth to London, 17 hours, 20 minutes. The 14,500-kilometer Qantas service launched this year is the first regular link between Australia and Europe, with the airline's Boeing 787 fleet connecting Perth and London.
Hi guys, I'm Ariel.
And I'm Kenneth. And we're your new hosts for The Break Room.
So please watch us every Monday at 7:30 to 8 in the evening. We are one with 25.
Landmarks, Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi. Diskusyon, Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 9 ng gabi.
How will we keep the prices down?
Pero baka matulungan niyo ako dito. May kaibigan ako, taga-Kapitolyo. Baka kilala niyo ho?
Welcome back. With Canada on the verge of becoming the world's second nation to legalize recreational marijuana, the head of the World Health Organization, or WHO, said Wednesday that countries should think twice before opening that door. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who was in the Philippines for a regional meeting, told AFP the organization supports availability of drugs like marijuana for medical reasons. He said he believes that people who need it, especially for pain management, should have it. There should be access. That access could be clearly regulated, he added, and throwing open the doors to full legalization carries its own health risks. As he spoke, Canada was a week away from allowing for adults to buy, grow, and consume cannabis, the second nation in the world to do so after Uruguay's move 5 years ago.
I think any addictive, what do you call it, whether it's drug or substance, is not good for human health. And we wouldn't encourage countries to follow those who are actually giving, what do you call it, legalizing it. And the only thing we use drugs like that is for medical use in a very regulated way to alleviate pain. That's it.
Since the middle of 2018, we've been waiting expectantly for Indonesian ride-hailing unicorn Gojek to launch their services in Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines this September. But September came and went and no Gojek was in sight in Singapore. Sources initially told TechCrunch that Gojek was set to launch there in October instead, a month later than promised. However, Gojek has now come out to confirm that it has partnered 6 car rental companies in Singapore in preparation for its arrival in November. The ride-hailing firm may have been waiting for the result of the Competition and Consumer Commission of Singapore's investigation into the Grab-Uber merger earlier this year. After the CCCS found the merger of the 2 ride-hailing giant anti-competitive and fined both parties a total of $13 million, Gojek said the verdict removed a very high barrier to entry. With CCCS's ruling for non-exclusivity, Gojek will be free to recruit Grab's current drivers and private hire drivers that can choose to drive on more than one app.
Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad's push for a third national car brand is aimed to consolidate trade within ASEAN to weather potential fallout from ongoing economic tension between the U.S. and China, Dara Laking said. The International Trade Minister said Dr. Mahathir's plan was for the Malaysian brand to be built with parts manufactured by neighboring countries. Laking also added that some ASEAN member nations have expressed interest in the project. Bloomberg reported that the 10-member ASEAN bloc is now the top destination among 1/3 of over 430 American companies in China. The Business Wire added that Thailand is ASEAN's biggest car maker currently. Southeast Asia's second biggest economy after Indonesia is assembling cars for Japan's Toyota Motor Corp, India's Tata Motors Limited, and Ford Motor Company. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. I'm Mariel Soriano.
Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Maricar Velasco. And
we are one with 25.